How do we enhance the administration of criminal justice? Make sure that offenders, irrespective of their tribe, their religion, their social status, are arrested and penalized. Now, to an extent, the responsibility for judicial prosecution lies with the federal government. But as far as I know, judiciary is not in the exclusive list. States do have a role to play. So maybe that conversation is what Zamfara state government needs to start. How come it's not playing its role in terms of arresting and prosecuting offenders? Why is it kidding around that element?
Nelson Mandela, a South African anti-apartheid activist who served as the first president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black head of state and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election. He once said, "Safety and security don't just happen. They are the result of collective consensus and public investment. We owe our children, the most vulnerable citizens in our society, a life free of violence and fear." Interesting. All right, the next one is from William Shakespeare, an English playwright, poet, and actor. He's widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language and world's greatest dramatist. He once said, "Security is the chief enemy of mortals." All right, our last quote is from Tom Ford, an American fashion designer and filmmaker. He once said, "No government can guarantee security. It can only tax production, distribution, and service, and gradually crush the power to pay taxes. That settles nothing. It only uses up the gains of the past and postpones the development of the future." All right then. Let's see how all of this could relate to what we'll be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Of course, my name is Annabelle Oji. As Nigeria's security challenges continues to raise serious cause for concern, one will begin to wonder, when exactly will all of these hydra-headed challenges become an issue of the past? Following the twin and terrorist attack that recently occurred just a few days ago, the attack on President Muhammadu Buhari's advance team, simply put, the presidential convoy, and the Kuje Medium Costodial Facility, I'm being joined by two security experts to discuss Nigeria's diverse security threats. Joining us here in the studio is Stephen Okwori, Managing Director, Mgt International Limited, and we also have joining us via Skype. That's Dr. Adamu Kabir. He is the Managing Director, Beacon Consulting Limited. We're back in a moment to kickstart the conversation. And that's after this time out. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now, if you just joined us, you're right on time for the interview. Our guest on the show today, first we have joining us here in the studio is Mr. Stephen Okwori. He is the Managing Director, Mgt International Limited. You're welcome to the show.
Glad to be here again.
Glad to always have you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, now joining us virtually via Skype is Dr. Adamu Kabir. He is the Managing Director, Beacon Consulting Limited. It's glad to have you here on the show, sir.
It's my pleasure, Annabelle. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, now, in fact, we don't even know exactly where to start from with regards to Nigeria's security situation. And then just when you thought that we are off with one, we keep going to more other challenges. Now, it's been attacked way too many, and then it's really amazing how non-state actors have managed to clamp down on various parts of the country, and then you just begin to wonder what exactly is the problem. And then the worst part of it all is that they keep sending videos and pictures of the heinous attacks with so much gumption. How quick they are to take responsibility for all of these attacks in the country, and where exactly the problem is. Now, we're coming to you, Dr. Kabir. What exactly is the situation? What exactly are we missing out on here?
Thank you once again, Annabelle. And the picture you painted, I think, is a picture that a significant number of Nigerians can relate to. The question, I think, on the mind of everybody is, why is all of this happening? Why have we reached a situation where non-state actors can boldly and brazenly attack the sovereign security departments that we have that have been constitutionally mandated to protect us, and not only attack them, but be very successful in carrying out those attacks, and unfortunately, with no consequence. Now, as a professional who looks into that, what worries me is the psychology behind all of this. If you have a situation where an adversary carries out such attacks and the adversary is successful, then simple psychological analysis would tell you that that adversary is becoming emboldened. If before his target was just one fruit, the next time he comes, he will want more fruits because he knows he was successful in getting that one fruit. And unfortunately, that is why we're seeing the incidents and the challenges becoming bigger and bigger because the small ones have not been corrected. Now, if, for instance, we can take this conversation forward and start asking who is to blame for the situation, I think it starts from the government down to us as individuals and members of our various families and our communities.
So we have a hand in
father,
this.
Yes, of course. A father who gives birth or a mother who gives birth to a kid, maybe a single parent, or it's a full family with the father and mother, and yet you do not take time to ensure that the community accepted values that every society agrees to is not impacted in that child, and that child grows up to be a deviant, a criminal, then of course you are responsible. And unfortunately, that's where we are. A lot of families today are dysfunctional, either from a sociological point of view or even from an economic point of view. And so kids grow up not to understand the very values. And I want to give you the simple example of hush puppy that everybody knows. Kids adored hush puppy. How many parents actually encourage kids to adore persons like hush puppy? I once went to the premiere of a movie, a Nigerian movie, somewhere in Europe. And for a lot of us in Nigeria, what we portray in our movies were okay. But amazingly, the outcome, normally after a premiere, discussions are held. And I was amazed at the kind of comments that came from that environment regarding the values that were portrayed in that movie. Values around the love for money, values around associating with practices that were considered either religious from a point of view of either the omnipotent religion or even the spiritual religion and all of that. So that, I think, is a contribution that we need to speak about. We're not doing enough of that. And then we can take it forward to the communities, take it also forward to the government, both at the federal and state level. So again, that responsibility, unfortunately, lies with a lot of areas, including schools, where you a child to a school, and then unfortunately, you and I know what happens in those schools. Then our religious places of worship that should have been the center point to correct some of these. Unfortunately, if you are living with you're a journalist, you, I'm sure, covered severally where our religious places of worship have been contributing three elements to these challenges that we're having. So, if I'm going to use one word to describe where we are, which is the question you asked me, I would say where we have what in literal terms can be described as a perfect storm in Nigeria. Everything that can go wrong, unfortunately, is going wrong at the moment. So at what point are we as a society going to sit up and say, well, we have a perfect storm. How do we start correcting these challenges that have led us to where we are at the moment?
All right, now, so Zamfara State, which is the epicenter of banditry in the northwest and north central parts of the country, has for years battled to contain the carnage, including granting amnesty to bandits and engaging vigilantes. But then all of these efforts have yielded little or no results. So if security is the primary responsibility of any government, like you stated, what do you make of the directive by the state government or the state governor asking individuals should be prepared to obtain guns to defend themselves against bandits? What are your thoughts on that?
First off, I would like to emphatically say that it is wrong to play games with people's lives. Yes, security is the primary responsibility of any government, as provided for in Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution. The first and primary responsibility of any government is to provide that security. You cannot, if we start discussing from 2010 till date, we can cite nothing less than at least 10 different attempts by the Zamfara state government to address security. Now, that for me is experimental, and we are dealing with people's lives. We should not be experimental in that regard. There is one thing that we need to do, which is to enhance the administration of criminal justice. How do we enhance the administration of criminal justice? Make sure that offenders, irrespective of their tribe, their religion, their social status, are arrested and penalized. Now, to an extent, the responsibility for judicial prosecution lies with the federal government. But as far as I know, judiciary is not in the exclusive list. States do have a role to play. So maybe that conversation is what Zamfara state government needs to start. How come it's not playing its role in terms of arresting and prosecuting offenders? Why is it kidding around that element? The first thing that this current governor, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, he's a well-respected person, but these are lives we're talking about, so I would need to be as factual as possible. The first thing he did when he came to power is to appoint a committee to investigate banditry. He had eminent persons, including former security practitioners, I think a retired DIG, several emirs who had security background, other persons of well-respected, including judicial persons, were in that committee. As far as I know, they submitted a well-documented report that had several recommendations. Now, from what I know, out of those recommendations, very few have been implemented. Even the ones that have been implemented, they were cherry-picked. So that is the crux of the matter, this desire to be politically correct. When the right recommendations, the right solutions have been put forward, they are not being done. And so we see experiments. You try this today, it's not effective, you try another one. Meanwhile,
so you call all of these moves that they have made as experiments?
Yes, for the simple reason that it not solved the problem. The solution, Annabelle, we can go round and round, and the solution to all of this is to go after the enemy. We know who the enemy is. Go after the enemy. And by going after the enemy, one of two things: you can arrest the enemy. If the enemy resists arrest and he fights back, you kill the enemy. And of course, if you are also doing the other one, which is to engage in a mediation with the enemy, then you engage in such a mediation that ends the issue. But you cannot have a situation. I made reference that this started as far back as 2010. We're in 2022, and people are dying. So it's experimental. Any measure that is not effective, that does not bring the issue to an end, unfortunately, it's experimental. And I just made reference to the fact that the government, state government, has in its custody a recommendation by experts that it had commissioned, and it's failing to implement that recommendation fully, mainly because it wants to be politically correct. Part of that recommendation included some far-reaching measures that if it has been implemented, I'm almost certain, even if the issues are not contained, at least a significant portion of it would have been contained by now. Anything short of going after the enemy, short of dominating the ungoverned space where the enemy operates, is just cherry picking and playing around with people's lives.
All right, we'll come back to you now. Stephen Okwori, you've heard all that he said. He said the government is just trying to be politically correct, and then all of the moves that they've made is just being experimental. Now, over 9,000 people, including 19 state emirates, will be licensed to carry guns. Now, a lot of people, including some state governors like Governor Akeredolu, and then some security officials and some security experts have actually given thumbs up to that directive, asking people to go get licensed gun. But then some people on the flip side have backlashed it and then said it is wrong, all shades and color of wrong. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, for me, I feel that the governors have exhausted every measures that they think would have aided in combating the security challenges in their country, in their states, sorry. And it's like the last kick of a dying horse, the decision of the governor of Zamfara State, asking for his citizens to bear arms in order to defend themselves. He has tried every measures, amnesty, reconciliation, dialogue, and all that, and it seems not to work. So, and he keeps seeing his people dying. For me, rather than individuals bearing these guns or weapons, I will advise that the communities that they have in Zamfara and other states in the country should form themselves into vigilante groups. And these guns can be assigned to these various communities where they have vigilante groups that are structured, under the supervision of the Nigerian police.
Okay.
Because it's not just giving them arms. They need to be trained on how to use it.
To use the arms.
And you don't expect them to form themselves into vigilante groups and don't bear arms when these bandits or terrorists come with sophisticated arms.
But you have some of the vigilante groups in other parts of the country and they don't bear arms.
That's what I'm saying. What's the essence of them forming themselves into vigilante group and not bearing arms? You can't defend your community without bearing arms, considering our current situation. So they must bear arms, to be able to fight back these bandits when they come to attack them. And most times when these bandits come, they succeed in attacking, kill, and kidnap the numbers they want to kidnap and go away. We've never seen situations where vigilante or members of that community that they come to attack kill any of them. So most times they come and they succeed and they go away without seeing anybody on the ground that, okay, this is one of the bandits that came. So you don't expect them to work without bearing arms. So for the Zamfara state government decision, it should be structured in such a way that it is given or assigned to a group of people, that when they go to their, so to say, armory to go and take these arms during their operations or during their foot patrol or something within their communities, they will go and sign in their logbook or something. They will know that Mr. XYZ are the ones that are signed and they are the ones bearing the arms during the patrol.
Okay.
With that, we can get result. We can't get result when they don't bear arms.
So now you're saying that it is actually better to give thumbs up to state security or policing, even though I remember President Muhammadu Buhari actually saying that we forget about state policing.
It has gotten to the level where local vigilante or whatever name they want to call them must have to bear arms, and but implying or implementing the community policing strategy, it's not just gathering of intelligence or information alone. It has gotten to the level, even the America where we went to borrow the community policing philosophy from. Yes, their situation is not as bad as what we're experiencing here. So in seeing that the community policing strategy really works, people that are implementing it within our local communities must have to bear arms.
All right. All right, let's come back to you, Dr. Adamu. Now, let's talk about the recent Kuje jailbreak. It's like a mirage to a lot of people, and then someone will just say, have you actually forgotten that Nigeria Defense Academy was attacked, and up until now, nothing has been heard. So now the Kuje Medium Costodial Facility, which is just 25 minutes away from the international airport and about 1 hour away from the FCT. And I recall there are various checkpoints around that area and even a military formation directly opposite the University of Abuja. But then you just begin to wonder how no security intelligence, how all of that happened for 2 straight hours, nothing, no calls, nothing. Was that attack avoidable at any point?
In simple answer, yes, it was avoidable. Were there vulnerabilities that could be exploited by an adversary? Yes. So even though it was avoidable, those vulnerabilities, they exist, they will still exist. And no matter how good your security posture is, a good adversary will always try to exploit gaps within that security posture. In our own case, the vulnerabilities were so apparent that what happened was it was a failure of having a good security arrangement. Kuje as the town, as the location, has always been vulnerable. We've known that gunmen, who we commonly refer to as bandits, were domiciled in the ungoverned spaces around Kuje, and they have over a period been going after these residents, and residents were living, their lives out of fear in that location. So the question is, at what point would those gunmen decide that, okay, we've had enough of these residents, let's go after bigger targets? Or at what point would an outsider collaborate with these gunmen and incentivize them and say, go after a particular target? What do they need when that happens? Do they just stand and study that bigger target and see the vulnerabilities around that target and exploit it? So to that extent, it was avoidable if we have been doing what we're supposed to do in terms of a good security architecture that had in place the 4 or 5 layers of security to detect, to deny, to delay, to serve as deterrence, or to have response, depending on what aspect you want to pursue. If we had all those layers in place, what happened on the 5th, I think, of July would never have happened. Unfortunately, we didn't have it. We still don't have it. And so it was vulnerable, and unfortunately, it was available. We allowed it.
All right, now looking at recent attacks on Nigeria's correctional center since last year, you have one in Okwori Custodial Center, that's in Imo State, that happened in April 5th. You have the one in Bauchi facility. You have the Abuja Correctional Facility in Edo State in April 14th. You have the Kumawa Prison, Kano State, that was attacked in April 22nd. You have Jos Custodial Center that was attacked in July 19th. You have the Kabir Medium Security Custodial Center that was attacked in September 13th. The Abolongo Custodial Center that was attacked in Oyo State, that's in April 22nd. And even the Jos Medium Security Custodial Center, that's in Plateau State, that was attacked in November 28th, that's last year. And then with what we even heard that those are even the attackers, the banks were even stalked at some point. And now you just begin to wonder, how come with all of this recent attacks, it just keeps happening? We don't learn our lessons. Where exactly is the problem coming from? Now you have security officials that they've actually given reasons why they could. Some say it's because of CCTV. Why is there no CCTV there? And they've given reasons. Keep pushing the blames. Where exactly is the problem coming from with all of these recent attacks that our custodial centers have seen?
Okay, in simple terms, I would say it's because we don't have accountability within our security sector. And unfortunately, it's not peculiar to security sector alone. It's a common feature that has now become part and parcel of our existence as Nigerians. Accountability is unfortunately fast becoming a stranger within government and several other practices in the country. I started this discussion by mentioning that there are levels of blame and responsibility. One of them is this accountability. We can, in all the instances you mentioned, if you pick the just custodial center rate or the one in Ondo or whichever one, I mean, I doubt, I have not heard, either yourself or Stephen can confirm to me whether you heard that any official was held accountable or responsible for the failures that led to that invasion. Now, if you have a situation where repeatedly breaches are being conducted and no one is being held accountable, then unfortunately all it means is that we'll have a continuation of that failure. But where there are such failures and someone is held accountable, the next person to occupy that position will make sure he or she sits up so that those breaches don't occur and he or she will continue to maintain his position. Unfortunately, that's not what we have at the moment. Now, I don't want to oversimplify the situation and say it's the fault of either the correctional services alone. No, it goes beyond that, because as far as I know, based on the 2019 Correctional Services Act, the protection of correctional services, depending on the level of security, the low one, the medium one, or the maximum one, is not just the responsibility of one arm of government, it's a responsibility that cuts across several arms of government. So for each case, what I would expect is, first off, an in-house investigation by the correctional services, another investigation by the supervisory ministry, which is the Ministry of Interior, and then more importantly, an investigation by the Parliament, the National Assembly, as the case may be, so that anyone who drops the ball, no matter how highly connected that person is held accountable. That way, going forward, we would make sure these things don't repeat themselves. Unfortunately, that is not happening at the moment. I didn't want to just pick specific issues and discuss them. I think this is like a broader look. Perhaps we can look at the internal failures that are allowing some of these things to happen. As an example, when you allow an inmate to have access, unfettered, I must underline that word, unfettered access to a telephone. An inmate has the right to communicate with his lawyer and perhaps the loved ones, but that right must be guided. When you have a situation where that access is unfettered and he or she is able to communicate freely and in certain instances arrange development even outside the custodial center, then honestly, it's a recipe for exactly what we're having at the moment. There are several other vulnerabilities and gaps, some of them internal, others external, including, for instance, the motivation of the personnel, the prison warders and other custodial staff. I hear of a situation that I won't want to mention the location, but because of the level of motivation and lack of welfare of the personnel in charge of that particular center, it took another government organization, because they had inmates that they were responsible for, to now take up the payment and the welfare of the custodial center. How can we have a situation like that? So that's the reason, unfortunately, where we're seeing this repeated, break-in of our custodial centers.
When we return, we'll expand this conversation. We'll see you shortly. The benefit of some of our viewers who don't understand the difference between the maximum and the medium custodial center. Yeah. Help us quickly break that down. Okay.
For the maximum correctional center or facility, it's basically meant for high-profile offenders, like the Boko Haram members and the SWAT members that we're talking about, or high drug barons and all that. They are supposed to be housed in a maximum prison. Unlike the medium prison where you can keep people that just commit just mere corruption.
Oh, so that means they were not supposed to even be housed in this medium custodial center?
At all.
Interesting.
Yes, they were not supposed to be housed there. They know all this. So instead of taking or improving on the condition or the way the prison is, to see how to be able to house the high-profile offenders, they took things for granted.
If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've missed quite a lot. Our guest on the show today, we have Stephen Okwori, who is a risk and security strategic management expert. And we also have Dr. Adamu Kabir, who is a risk management expert. All right, and before we went on that break, we actually Dr. Adamu Kabir rather actually said quite a lot of things with regards to why custodial center are vulnerable to these heinous attacks that we've been seeing even recently. Now, we heard of that excuse or that report of not having CCTV. Does it have anything to do with all of this?
I want to say that it's very disappointing and disheartening to hear that the correctional center doesn't have a CCTV coming from the Senate President. You see, the National Assembly, they have committees on interior that are supposed to oversight all these agencies under the committee. So when they go on that oversight, what is it that they go to do? So, okay. When I heard it, I was very disappointed, truly. But the Correctional Center in Kuje was established in 1989. And the way it was built and designed, it's not supposed to house high-profile offenders like the terrorist group and bandits as very wild as that. Mm. So, it is not new. I expected that the correctional service would have thought of trying to see how to fortify the medium center in Kuje.
Are some of these these terrorists that left, are they even convicted?
No, they're still standing trials. Mm. You know. Of course, you know that if you go there, you see that the wall that still exists is the wall that was built since 1989. So it's not rocket science for them to think outside the box to see that, okay, since we are housing high-profile offenders such as this number, up to 65, they would have seen how to take the level of the current situation or condition to a level that is almost a maximum prison size. Mm. You know, because...
Okay, for the benefit of some of our viewers who don't understand the difference between the maximum and the medium custodial center, help us quickly break that down.
Okay. For the maximum correctional center or facility, it's basically meant for high-profile offenders, like the Boko Haram members and these ISWAP members that we are talking about, or high drug barons and all that. Mm. Because this category of crime falls in the maximum level where if they want to see how to house them, it is the maximum prison. Reasons because most of these offenders, they have a greater threat to the safety of the public, which of course you know, and they require very high degree of supervision, their eyes are supposed to be on them, and they have the potentials of trying to see how to, or the chances of trying to see how to escape from prison, So they are supposed to be housed in a maximum prison, unlike the medium prison where you can keep people that just commit just mere corruption.
So that means they were not supposed to even be housed in this medium custodial center?
At all.
Interesting.
Yes, they were not supposed to be housed there. They know all this. So instead of taking or improving on the condition or the way the prison is to see how to be able to house the high-profile offenders. They took things for granted. Every CG that comes, he sees the whole thing there as a normal process, is a normal tradition. They don't think. As I'm talking to you, it's for me, it's the government is to be blamed. If you are blaming the government, who next do you blame? The correctional center. The CG for me, at least by now, it should be on suspension.
So are you surprised that heads have not started rolling after days?
It's very disappointing. I'm very surprised. Though, if you ask me to say more, I will say I'm not, because this part of the world, people are rewarded for lack of for failing their responsibility. Now, I just want to add to what Dr. Kabir said in terms of panel investigating to know what truly transpired and all that and make recommendation. Yes, he made a recommendation, the panel from the Correctional Center, the National Assembly and all that, and the Ministry of Interior. These are people who are already in government. They will bring up recommendations to protect their job. I would advise that an independent panel should be set up to and look at what actually transpired and take recommendations from this independent panel. You know, so it's not something that we should play around with at all. But the most important thing again is that how far do we even go when these reports are put up? You listed quite a number of correctional centers that were attacked. Reports came from there. So how far did the government go with the reports? I expect that once reports come, we'll look at the gaps and try to see how to close the gap.
All right.
To foster further occurrence. But are we doing that?
It's quite unfortunate. Now let's come back to you, Dr. Kabir. What does this act of ISWAP freeing their members mean to the average Nigerian or Abuja resident? What advice do you have for people living around the area? And how do you think that the government and the armed forces should have, should they have done or to either recapture the fleeing guys? Because we keep hearing that 1, 2 of them are being captured, either in Ogun State or some of them returned back.
Yeah, so we've lost an opportunity when incidents like that happen. You usually have a very small window where if you do the right thing, then you would have an opportunity to reduce the consequence of the whole outcome. In this instance, we've lost that opportunity, and so it's likely that these guys have already melted into the different locations that the attackers had intended them to melt into, so it will be a little bit more difficult to recover them. As an example, one of the first things we should have done was to cordon off Kuje completely, cordon it off, so that even if it's a mosquito that is, living Kuje, we're able to identify the biometrics of that mosquito and whether that mosquito had sucked blood from one of the inmates. And then, of course, we take the next action. So we lost that opportunity and they're gone. Now, since we know that, again, this is a public forum, so I don't want to say too much. But one of the things I'm hoping is that during the period of detention, now just to build and add context to our conversation, 79% of the inmates, 1,001 of them, were awaiting trial, including the almost 40 plus that were high-profile terrorist suspects. They were all awaiting trial. I doubt if there was any of them that was convicted. They were suspects and they were awaiting trial. Some of them for upward of 10 years. Now we cannot have that situation. That should be the beginning point of our conversation. Why we have this huge number of persons. In the case of Kuje prison, 79% of them were on the awaiting trial list. Only about 21% were actual convicts. So that's kind of the beginning point. Now I'm hoping that during that period of detention, like I said, very long period, they would have been interrogated by the different security departments. They would have been debriefed. Their skill sets, and that's the point I want to bring out. Their skill sets is already in a dossier. So now, and I'm hoping that that's what is happening at the moment. The different security departments would have been sitting in their war rooms to say, okay, this person that has social skill set is now out there in the open. This is what is going to use that skill set for. Maybe he has skill sets for making IEDs, for making bombs, for whatever. So that's what he's going to use that skill set for. So we know, and in security parlance, this mantra that we see, awareness leads to anticipation, and anticipation would help you to mitigate. So if they're in that war room and they identify the skill set, they build scenarios upon which those skill sets can be deployed, then the logical thing to do is to now build mitigation so that eventually if that person decides to use those skill sets, already we have in place mitigation measures. Now, am I seeing that? I'm not seeing that, Annabelle, and I'm hoping that this platform that you've provided will encourage our security agencies to start this type of war room scenario exercise where they sit down among themselves, put forward the skill sets of these individuals, build scenario A, scenario B, scenario C of the outcome of the usage or the deployment of that skill set. And then, of course, more importantly, build anti-terrorism and counter-terrorism mitigation measures, and then immediately roll out a plan for the implementation of those anti-terrorism and counter-terrorism measures. I'm not seeing that at the moment. So in the absence of that by the government, what can we as individuals do? The US government, State Department, embassy here in Nigeria, the UK High Commission, the UN, they've put out alerts for their citizens, for their constituencies, their persons, that employees and all that. Now, as an average Nigerian, if your government hasn't provided you, pick up those alerts and see what it means to you. If you are a business owner, what anti-terrorism measures can you put in place? If before you don't have access control, this is the time to have access control. Okay. If you don't have any hostile vehicle mitigation measures, you allow vehicles to come close to your building, you don't check what is in those vehicles, this is the time for you to start doing that. Time will not allow me to go into every aspect of anti-terrorism or counter-terrorism measures that we should implement, but these are available online. Like I said, these three governments or intergovernmental organizations have put out alerts, and in those alerts there are various recommendations. Each as an individual or a business entity, or even you as a journalist and your organization, you can pick up that and start implementing those measures. Let's not wait until these guys put their skill sets in practice. Unfortunately, too late at that time.
All right, and so with all of the attacks that we've actually seen, even the attack on our military men, our finest military men, even most recently, and now recently you have President Muhammadu Buhari is asking his successor and telling them that it has been tough for him, so he can't wait to leave. Now, do you think that it has anything to do with security? Looking at the fact that even his own convoy was attacked recently, and then you have the presidency on the other side painting a different picture with regards to the security situation or challenges in the country compared with other administration. How worse can it actually get before it gets better?
Annabelle, this reference and comment is a little bit beyond my remit. My preference is really not to even say anything about it, but that's on the light side. On a serious note, the onus is on us as the people to say enough is enough. The social contract, where in an organized society, because of the social contract, without the social contract, what we have is a Hobbesian state of nature. And I'm sorry to say, we're almost at that stage now, where life, frankly, is brutish, and it's reaching a stage where the strongest person has his or her way in Nigeria. And that's not what we want as a society. I don't want my kids, and I'm sure all of us don't want our kids to continue growing up in such an environment. So we need to speak up. We need to make emphatic statements to anyone on the other side of the social contract. And by that, I mean anyone in government. And honestly, the mistake is to put that emphasis on the federal government. Yes, they have a lot of responsibility, but governance cuts across different levels. State governors have huge responsibilities in these discussions that we're having. Likewise, the different arms of government, like Stephen mentioned, the legislature has a huge responsibility in our democratic system to check the inactivity, the excesses of the executive arm of government. So the onus is on us as the people. I'm not happy with the trajectory that we are having at the moment. The trajectory where our politics has a huge emphasis on religion and other issues that, frankly, are not as important to our outcome as a people. Yes, religion is significant, it's important, but what role does religion really play in governance? If you appoint a pastor or an imam as a governor today, would he do any better than the current one? The essence, I think, is to look at the issues, those critical issues that will translate to good governance. As an example, the leadership ability, the vision of that leader, his or her understanding of the challenges that we have as a country, his ability to manage, to bring together a team that can address our challenges. I'm hoping that the narrative around our politics going into 2023 would leave where they are at the moment to go to practical issues. If I'm going to hazard like a quick listing of the critical issues, they will not pass our economy, security, and then of course corruption. Just like this, the existing government has prioritized them. But the challenge is, what are the ways to address these three issues? That should be the narrative ahead of the 2023 election, and that should be the narrative that we as a people should drive, so that the politicians understand that, no, yes, religion is there, it's important, but what is even more important is those critical issues that will change our current trajectory. We want a society that is functional and progressive.
You have actually touched on the next question I was going to ask you, but before we ask, we'll definitely talk later on that. Before we get on with the policies of 2023, let's talk to you, Stephen. Now, seeing with all that he said, and then we saw that last weekend, we saw a particular report saying that the ISWAP have declared war against Christians, and that they're going after schools, markets, and all. And then we actually now saw a report from NSCDC. We don't know if it was leaked, but then it's actually found its way to the public, saying that some areas in Abuja are going to be like the catchment area, or like they are like the hub, a safe haven for terrorists. That's in Gwagwalada, in Kubwa, and I think it was Kuje and then Buhari. So now, with that kind of report, is it like trying to tell Abuja residents to be extra careful more than what they have been before, or is it trying to like put fear on people? What do you see? What are your thoughts on that report?
I don't think we need that kind of report to be extra careful or cautious in dealings or wherever we go in Abuja, even within the country. We have seen a lot of signs and a lot of evidence of incidents of attacks and all that has been happening in Abuja and outside Abuja. So for the report to have leaked, I feel if it's a genuine report, it shows a very gross misconduct or very unprofessional way of the way and manner the NSCDC have handled their internal memo that is supposed to be.
So if you're living around that area, you should be like extra careful, or what?
Exactly. You don't even need that information going by what we are saying, you know.
Because a lot of people just believe that we're in the FCT.
Yes.
Insecurity should not come to the FCT because this is like the power hub.
Insecurity should not come into the FCT. We've been seeing challenges here within the FCT. There was the bomb in Emab, Nyanya, Kuje, even around the Federal Ministry of the High Court, the Federal Ministry of Justice there, you know. So FCT has been vulnerable. So the Kuje recent jail attack or something, it's not new, it's not surprising to me, you know. So FCT is part of Abuja. So the bandits or terrorists, they want to send a message, you know, to the government and the security agencies that there's nowhere they cannot enter. going as far as striking or attacking the convoy of the president. Do you know how far that message has gone? You know, so they are up their game. They know what they are looking for. They know what they are doing. You know, they tried all this while to see how to negotiate with the government to see how to release their commanders in the Kuje prison. Then they will release those trained victims. The government was very slow about the negotiation. So you see the situation the government has found themselves.
Now, do you see security officials going after them? Sorry to cut in there. Do you see security officials, the military, going after them because we've had so many marching orders saying shoot at sight and all of that?
I keep saying that do the military or the police need marching orders to carry out their job that they are constitutionally saddled to do? You don't have to wait for any marching orders. The Constitution has already given you the marching orders or the act that established any of the security agencies. So why must you rely on a marching order? So it's a tax they've been saddled to do, to protect the territorial integrity of the country, protect lives and property within. So I don't believe in marching orders. They have been saddled with the responsibility to carry out that tax, to protect citizens. Why are they doing it? We don't rely on any marching order.
All right, then let's come back to you, Dr. Kabir, because you talked about religion. Now, let's divert a little bit and talk about the recent choice of running mate by the All Progressive Congress presidential candidate, that's Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who picked the former Borno State Governor, Shettima. And this have created a lot of dust and fuss to the polity. Some say that it will stir up some kind of religious crisis, while according to Adegboru at the SAN, he stated that this will be an incentive for ISWAP and Boko Haram crisis. Do you agree with this?
Annabelle, politicians are doing their thing. We are technocrats and professionals. Yes, we can analyze their actions and even make recommendations. But frankly, they are doing their thing. The All Progressive Congress is one political party out of 18 that we have in the country. If they've made a choice that you don't align with, and I honestly don't see what the noise is all about. You have 17 other choices, except if all the other 17 choices are going the same way, then yes, maybe then at that point we should, as a country, have that conversation. So I don't see what the noise is all about. It's a distraction, I think, from what we should be concentrating in the country. We have this saying in my native language, Hausa, that the hyena that is meant to be beaten, whatever you do, that the hyena will go to the market that day. So if those that are shouting, hey and you and whatever, why wouldn't they just accept the fact that that's the decision that that party has made? And if they are not happy with that decision, then for God's sake, move to the other 17 parties. I don't see why we should, frankly, as technocrats, join the fray of this political discussion. It doesn't add, as far as I'm concerned, any security value. It's a political decision, and they know why they made that decision. And in February and May, we'll have a chance to align or not align ourselves with that decision. That's my point.
All right. So now let's divert a little bit and talk about the FCTA's policy to close all gardens and parks in Abuja from 7 p.m. And then some people will say that probably it's with regards to security, since some of these parks have become a safe haven for terrorists. What are your thoughts on that? Is that is that like an end to the means, or a means to an end?
So first off, I think it's a knee-jerk reaction. There was an incident that happened, I think in either the last week of May, or last week of June, or sometime within June, when somewhere along airport route, we're told that a vehicle arrived at a particular cooling spot, a garden, parked, and then entered the park, and then rounded off all the patronized us, and then one after the other, forcefully collected their items and left uncutted. So it appears that that incident awoken the FCT administration to the vulnerabilities around those relaxation spots, and they took this decision. So again, I think it's a knee-jerk reaction. Okay. In every crime situation, there are three things you look at: the opportunity, the intent, and the capability of the perpetrator. What the FCT administration has tried to do is to take away the opportunity as it were. But then that leaves several other opportunities. So if you take out relaxation spots, what of the several other locations that they can go to that are even probably more pricey, more important than those relaxation spots? I think it's a knee-jerk reaction. We can do better as a country in terms of managing our security challenges.
All right, let's come to you with that same question. Now, the FCT was said and was quoted as saying that we wish to reiterate that parks are meant for the protection of our green component and the building and fabric of the city, beautification and relaxation of citizens in one peace and tranquility. They are never created to serve as drinking joints and drug peddling. Henceforth, all violations are going to be checkmated. What are your thoughts on this very quickly, even as we begin to round up?
Yeah, I was made to understand that this policy of parks closing at 7 p.m. and certain regulations about the parks and gardens was enacted or established in 2005. During Obasanjo's administration.
Yes.
Yeah, you see, this part of the world is laws are not meant for human beings, because if you ask me, I will tell you that we love breaking the laws in this part of the world. If you are given an operational license to operate a garden or something, and there are clearly stated rules within the how you should operate, why not keep to it? You are expected to keep to it and not begin to go outside what the letter of operation has been handed to you. So I heard reliably that alcohol and all that were clearly stated in the rules guiding operation of parks, that they should not be sold. So why are the operators going outside?
But it has been there over time. So how come we just woke up to that policy? They tried doing it at that time. I think it was during Madam Nasser El-Rufai, and then it actually met a lot of resistance from these operators.
Yes.
So if it met those resistance then, how do you think that it will be possible to achieve now that we have even way more than at that time? I think we have less than 20 parks, yes. But now we have over 100 of them.
You see, I think they have to look at it to give a clear-cut demarcation. If parks such as the Millennium Parks and all that are established to have such rules, is understood. But parks or gardens where people go to have their leisure, take some drinks, fish and all that, and you are coming to tell them that they should close the gardens at 7 p.m., when that's their peak period. That's when people close from work and begin to retire to gardens, So they should try and see how to clearly define the ones that are supposed to close at 7 p.m., like the Millennium Parks and all that, because you cannot begin to see a reason why they sell alcohol at the Millennium Park, But gardens, they should try and see how to clearly spell their rules and regulations, bordering on these two.
All right, so our time is fast spent. Now we are here already.
Yes.
How can we salvage the situation, the security challenges of Nigeria?
You see, I feel that all of us are supposed to own the problem. Anyhow you want to look at it, because you see some political parties, they say that if we are not the government in power, we are not the party in power, it's APC, they should face the issues and all that. But unfortunately, when these issues come on us, the bandits or terrorists, they don't differentiate who is a member of any political party or religion, So it's our responsibility to see how to face it, and the synergy between amongst the security agencies, and people should be accountable for failure in their responsibility. They should be fired or suspended or not. So when the next person is coming on board, the person will know that the government is up and doing and will not relent in trying to see how these issues are tackled or handled.
All right. So Dr. Kabir, even as we begin to round up, what are your last words on this? How do we salvage the situation? Because now we keep hearing blame games, people throwing shades at each other, some people giving backlashes, and then the others who are supposed to even foster this security keep answering to all of this. How do we salvage the situation?
I would align with what Stephen said. Accountability and responsibility, I think, is the way to go. And we have a democratic system of government that, have clear checks and balances. A lot of these organizations are under the executive arm of government. So perhaps one of the first things we should do is to strengthen the legislative arm of government. That means during the 2023 elections, we should pay particular attention to who we're electing into the legislature. Let them be persons who have the capacity to call a spade and to check the excesses of the executive arm of government. Again, it would be nice if those that we're having in the executive arm are persons that are capable and that would do what we want as the people. I've talked about how the narratives ahead of the election should be geared around what we want as a country. But more importantly is to have a system that is able to check itself and that would push forward our aspirations as the people, where accountability and responsibility from all spectrums, starting from government down to the family unit, should be what we have. I don't know how to logically explain to my grandchild to be how we're about to have an election, and then we have one of the most important segments in our society, the educational sector, the universities. They've been on strike for how many months now? I don't know how to explain that to my child. It's not logical that as a people we have accepted that, and we still go ahead and vote persons who have their children schooling outside to superintend over us. It's not logical. Those are the things we need to change as a people.
Thank you so much for your time with us, Dr. Adamu Kabir, Security Risk Management Expert. It's been a wonderful time having this talk with you.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much. And I'm waiting for my both birthday as well as that. I'll be happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Stephen Okwori, Strategic Security Management Expert. It's been a wonderful time having this discussion with you.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, viewers, that's all we can take for the show today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll definitely see you again next time. From the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. God bless Nigeria.